Our third video for Unit 2 includes page 8 of your study guide. The sample question states, carbohydrates and proteins are two types of macromolecules. Which functional characteristic of proteins distinguishes it from carbohydrates? Let's look at what is not the answer first. A, large amounts of stored information. That's actually referring to DNA. B, the ability to catalyze or speed up a biochemical reaction. We know that enzymes are a special class of proteins that speed up biochemical reactions, so that might be the answer. Efficient storage of usable chemical energy, that's referring to lipids, and tendency to make cell membranes hydrophobic is also referring to lipids. So the answer that makes the most sense here is definitely B. It's asking what makes carbohydrates and proteins different from each other. The only correct answer there is going to be B. Before we move any further in page 8, I would like to review in your Unit 2 Biochemistry and the Molecules of Life review sheet. All right, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 are basically already in the study guide, so I'm not going to spend time talking about them in the video. But number 7 is not in the study guide. This is the table that we've done 1,000 times before that goes over the monomers and polymers of our macromolecules. You've got your polymer, which is a carbohydrate. You want to think about that as the Lego castle. Carbohydrates typically end in OSE. The monomer of a carbohydrate is a monosaccharide. That's what it looks like. And its job is short-term energy structure for plants. Some examples are cellulose, glucose, fructose, lactose. Next up are lipids. The monomer for a lipid is glycerol. You've got a glycerol unit with some fatty acid chains attached to it. 3 fatty acid chains is a triglyceride. 2 fatty acid chains is a diglyceride. The role of a lipid is to store long-term energy and provide waterproof coverings for biological membranes. Examples of lipids are fats, oils, and waxes. Next up are our nucleic acids, Na. Nucleic acids are DNA and RNA. They are made up of nucleotides. In a nucleotide, you have a 5-carbon sugar with a phosphate group and one of 4 nitrogenous bases, adenine, thymine, guanine, or cytosine. The job of a nucleic acid is to transmit genetic information. Nucleic acids also store coded instructions for making proteins. Next up, we have proteins. That's the macromolecule. The monomer is an amino acid. A protein is an amino group, a carboxyl group, and your R, or your variant. Proteins fight diseases, build muscles. They are special classes of proteins called enzymes, and they do much, much more. Let's go back to the study guide now. All right, describe a general composition of a protein molecule. Just said it. Amino group, R group, which is your variant, and your carboxyl group. The variant is referring to any of the 20 amino acids. We've got 12 non-essential amino acids. That means your body makes them automatically, and we have 8 essential amino acids that you need to eat. Describe how the structure of a protein differs from the structure of a carbohydrate. You see that's your protein structure. Your carbohydrate can be a chain, a branched chain, or a ring. The big difference also is that your amino acid is going to have a nitrogen, whereas your carbohydrates are just carbon, oxygen, and hydrogen. All right, and then part C. Again, this is where you might want to pause and just take a few minutes to look over all of this. Describe how the functions of proteins differ from the functions of carbohydrates. These guys do a lot of things. Carbohydrates are molecules that provide quick energy for the cell and can be used for structure in certain organisms, like plants. Carbohydrates are made up of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. Carbohydrates are made up of monomers called monosaccharides that combine to make polysaccharides. Saccharide rings can be formed into long, straight, or branched chains. Carbohydrates can be called simple carbohydrates or complex carbohydrates. Simple carbohydrates are smaller and generally some type of a sugar. Complex carbohydrates are larger. These include starch and cellulose in plants and glycogen in animals. Proteins are molecules that act as structure in the body along with their job as an enzyme. Proteins are made up of carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, and nitrogen. Proteins are made up of monomers called amino acids, which are arranged in long chains. A chain of amino acid makes a protein. Muscle, hair, fingernails, tendons, etc. are made up of proteins.